So many different thoughts, I'm guessing, in your mind this week. Believe it or not, overshadowing the incredible historic numbers and things that are happening with the pandemic right now. There was even more bigger news to even overshadow that this week. And again, on Epiphany Sunday, when we follow the light of Christ, when the light is revealed to us of all days on Wednesday, when we know what happened in Washington, D.C., and the terrorist attack truly on our country by our own citizens. Again, so many different thoughts, I'm sure, and feelings that we all were having. I'm sure sharing many of the same, of just disbelief, in some ways shock, but maybe not surprise, or really not disbelief, because maybe we knew after years of all this kind of hate talk that this was bound to happen. But again, we are called to step back and to see the whole picture. You know, in the scripture that we just read in Matthew, they left for their country by another road. And again, I just encourage us to be thinking about that. What are the other roads that we can be taking? What are the roads to reconciliation that we can be taking? I labeled the Kids Connection video for this week, and if you would like to view that, I talked about the importance of diversity, and I talked about the importance of tolerance, in that we all, it's okay, and in fact, in many ways a good thing, that we all have different opinions for things. With the kids, I dressed in blue. I happen to have a blue hat and a blue, and I was talking about dog people or cat people, or, you know, I want everyone to love blue just because I like blue, and there must be something wrong with you if you don't also love blue, right? And so we just kind of talked through all of that. I hope in terms that they could understand, but maybe would be meaningful for adults as well, that God made us in such a great diversity, and that what a blessing that is, but also that we don't need to be forcing our opinions on every single person that we meet. We don't have to be getting on Facebook going, well, here's what I think, and going off, correct? We need to be stopping and just reflecting a little bit more. But we also talk with the kids of what are appropriate ways to be showing your unhappiness, or if you think that there is an injustice, that there are ways in this country that we can and should do that in peaceful ways, of standing up and saying, no, this is wrong, and here's why, and here's, you know, what I feel, but in ways that don't infringe on the rights of other people, that don't harm other people. You know, it's interesting, Richard in his video talked about a deep sense of respect. Did you hear him say that? About how awe and wonder that we need to be, and that's just somehow missing in our lives. And I think in general, maybe some of us kind of got that feeling. Maybe you visited the Capitol before. I did several years ago. I took my mom and dad and my niece, Amanda, and we went to the Capitol. And then just maybe no longer ago than that, maybe 4 years ago, we took my mother-in-law, who hadn't really been there, and before she passed, we took her there. And so it's an amazing place to see all the history that is there, and especially, again, as you walk into the Capitol. And there is a sacredness about that. There is a sacredness about all of life. And I do think that that's part of the problem, is that we are losing, or have lost, or need to regain that sense of awe and wonder, that sense of respect for all things and all people, including our world, our creation, trees, you know, the ocean, the air that we breathe, but also just in respecting each other and showing respect. That I'm not going to be brandishing my, weapons when you are trying to serve our country, but yet you have to cower in fear for something to happen to you while you're doing that. Where is that sense of respect, right? We even, see it sometimes right in our worship spaces as well, that all of life is holy. And yes, I believe this church, is certainly, and that's why we usually, are very careful about what we are doing here in this space. But truly, every place is, right? Your home is a sacred space if you believe that Jesus is there. In my sermons, I preach that Jesus is the third person in your marriage whenever I am doing a preaching for a wedding. I'll always make sure to mention that Jesus is a third unseen presence, but hopefully very much felt in your home, or a fourth or a fifth or a 10th, depending on how many kids you have or how many people are living in your home. But that still should be, I believe, a sacred space. And if you think of all of life as that sacred space, then sometimes that changes the way that you treat other people, right? Or the language maybe that comes out of your mouth. Or the way that you maybe demean or talk down to people. That changes things. It changes the way that you even take care of your body. If you view yourself as being a temple that God created and your job is to take care of that, it changes everything if you view things with awe and wonder and with a sense of the holy and deep respect for all things. And again, we didn't see that on Wednesday night. And again, I had sent out, the UCC had put out a prayer vigil, and I had sent out the link to that, and it quickly got filled up on their webinar, but then it was available live stream, so maybe some of you were able to see that. Also, you can find it on YouTube if you would like to, and I'm sure the American Baptist Church will be putting something out similar. But it was a half an hour service maybe, but just again talking about the importance to combat that kind of hatred and division and everything that we saw on Wednesday and that we're still seeing and hearing. Combat that again with unity and love. And it's hard. It's really hard when you watch images on TV or you watch different people and you say, how on earth are they able to do that? Why are they doing that? How can they possibly think that, right? And it's so difficult. I had a really hard time watching the images on the news, and then there's maybe you noticed it, the person with a big Jesus flag in the middle of all of this violence and hatred. It just made my heart sick. And again, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, I think that we all agree that's what's needed right now, is us to be able to stop and to listen to each other and to work together, but and show love. And again, I know that sounds so basic, I guess, and simple, but yet it's not. I guess it's simple, but it's not easy. I had sent out the link to that UCC prayer service, and I got an email back from Nancy Billings, so shout out to Nancy and Ned and Julie if they're watching as well. But she made the comment, thank you for sending this video link, and then she said, boy, isn't it a shame that instead of all the unrest and anarchy happening in Washington, D.C. right now, wouldn't it have been great if everybody just would have stopped what we're doing and just watched the UCC prayer service? And I got such a kick out of that, and such just a feeling of, that's really all it takes, not to turn into the UCC prayer service necessarily, but that's all it takes, is just taking those moments. Because again, we've seen that already. Yes, they're from the news reports. Yes, there were some specific cells of groups and organizations that had very specific agendas on Wednesday. But then I think there also were some people that got carried away in the moment, right? I'm signed up for a mob mentality webinar, and I can't wait, because it's fascinating. Whether it be in the football stadium, or whether it be, at a concert, or whether it be something like this at a protest that, again, could have been peaceful and but turned deadly. So, but again, I just thought, just taking that time to just stop and step back, and again, to pray. And that's what we're called to do, right? We're called to step back and pray. That whole idea, again, of that Salah that we see and we hear in our Psalms. And we'll be kind of experiencing that here very shortly. Awe and wonder. How important that is to live with that sense of awe and wonder. To live with that sense of God is directing our lives. God is holding our lives. You know, when the kids were young, we would talk about, different things, of course, with, hearing God's voice or called it to us. And we know, again, that there have been some people that have heard, whether it's through, if you would believe it, angels or the Holy Spirit or God, but we've had various people that have told me stories, and I'm sure probably told you stories of hearing the voice of God speaking to them. Somebody was hurt, and they, was somewhere else in a farm accident, and they just felt this sense and heard this voice and went out, and sure enough, they saved that person. So we hear these things. But what we would always tell the kids is when you feel like maybe you should be following a voice or following an urge or following the call, that you need to make sure that it's the right person that you're listening to, right? Is it just our arrogance? Is it just our pride? Is it just our love of control, our love of being able to put other people under our thumb or step on them, right? Is that what's calling us or spurring us on to do things? Or is it the voice of God? And again, to me, the measuring stick is very, very simple. If you are feeling urged to, if what you feel urged to do is going to hurt other people, infringe upon other people, cause injury to them, either mentally or physically, then guess what, folks? That call is not from God. That call's from somebody else. And again, that somebody else, yes, certainly is evil incarnate, but it also is us inside, right? Our human flaws and frailties of, again, pride, hunger for power, hunger for people to see us, hunger for us to think that we are the very, very best and everybody else isn't. Hunger that our particular skin color, our particular ideology, those are all the best, and everybody else's is wrong. Can you see again how quickly things can be subverted? We need to look back and stop and say, okay, who did Jesus hang out with? What would Jesus have said or done in this situation? And again, I understand that maybe your answer is going to be very different from what my answer is. I get that. And I get that there are very wonderful people that I know that are of a very different political leaning than I am. But yet I know that they're wonderful, giving, loving people. So that's, I guess, my other call to you this morning. I know it's difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult to not just sit there and judge, right? As you're sitting there watching events happen, or as you're sitting, listening and reading different things. It's so difficult. But again, thankfully, we all know people that have very different opinions than we do that we still love. And so we are called, I believe, to, yes, be true to our own judgments, be true to what we feel God is calling us to do, which is right in His eyes. But we also need to really try to understand where other people are coming from, to try to find out, why would you act this way? Why would you say that? Why would you believe that? To try to figure that out. Maybe to just see a little bit of a different point of view, because maybe there are some things that we ourselves in our own rightness or self-righteousness maybe aren't right on. But then also, again, to just be able to agree to disagree, to show love and respect. I don't understand why you're saying that or how you could believe that, but yet you're a child of God also. And I'm going to try to show you that love and respect that you deserve, that every person deserves. And again, by doing so, maybe you also then, or that person, will also be moved to show that love and respect. And maybe that's, again, how we get to that sense of awe and wonder that we read about or heard about in both of our scriptures today, both in the Psalm and in the reason why the Magi would stop everything, leave everything they know, and go to worship the risen King. Maybe some of you were watching our services when we were talking and actually attending services, so this would have been in September when we did a series on the Enneagram. And one of the people who has taken the Enneagram and applied Christian principles to that, I think very successfully, is author and theologian Richard Rohr. And I wanted to share parts of an article today called A Foundational Sense of Awe. And I hope, again, that you find it meaningful. But he says, healthy religion gives us a foundational sense of awe. It re-enchants an otherwise empty universe. It gives people universal reverence toward all things. Only with such reverence do we find confidence and coherence. And again, that's what we're looking for, right, is coherence, too. Only then does the world become a safe home. Then we can see the reflection of the divine image in the human, in the animal, in the entire natural world, which has now become inherently supernatural. Teacher Barbara Holmes describes this awakening so well and poetically, and I'd like to share from her writing. When we are fully alert in spirit, mind, and body, we are more than we imagine and can accomplish more than we suppose. Moments of awareness occur as a dawning of meaning, when the familiar suddenly becomes infused with new insights, or unfamiliar ideas merge with the wellspring of experiences and beliefs that pervade human consciousness. Such occasions feel like personal discovery. And I just wanted to stop for just a moment. I talked about that with the kids as well, again, about a little bit with the whole New Year's concept as well, but of just taking some time. Maybe we've really gotten into a rut. Maybe we've really gotten into a rut of, okay, so I'm just going to keep baking cookies, to get through the pandemic. That was us like March, April, May, right? But maybe there's just been a certain thing that's just gotten you through. And again, we all needed to do something to get through. I understand that. But if it's not something that's really life-giving, maybe now's that time to go, okay, we still have some time yet in this pandemic for sure, but I'm going to try to react to it in a little different way, perhaps. Or even if you've already been doing things that are kind of life-giving to you, but I want to try something different. Even if it's something as simple as, today I'm going to drive a different way home from work. I'm just going to take a different way. And I'm going to see different things, and I'm going to see different people's homes and situations. Just changing that up a little bit is good for your brain health, right? But also, it's just good for your overall sense of a general revelation of the world. These new epiphanies, right? Again, we're in the season now of epiphany or new awakenings. While in the midst of epiphany going on with Barbara Holmes, while in the midst of an epiphany, folks inevitably apply the term discovery to lands, people, and ideas that have always been present. We use the language of strange and alien sightings when the more accurate statement would be, Eureka! I have just awakened to a long-standing reality that an inner unveiling has finally allowed me to see. And I love that again, some of these things have been there. It's just that we need to open up our spirits. We need to take some Selah time, pause, to just allow ourselves to be seen by God and heard, and for us to hear Him even more importantly, obviously. An awakening is necessary to reconnect our origins and one another. And again, I'd like to return to Richard Rohr to conclude today. Instead of nurturing awe, reconnection, and awakening, I'm sorry to say that today we have a lot of ideological, I'm not sure why I'm having trouble reading today, hysteria and junk religion. Ooh, when I read that the first time, I'm like, well, okay, let's explore this more. Junk religion. On both the left and the right, he says. Junk religion is similar to junk food because it only satisfies enough to gratify the momentary desire, but does not really feed the intellect or the heart. And that struck me. That really struck me. Junk religion satisfies only enough to gratify the momentary desire, and if I can insert, sometimes just the things that we want to hear, right? But does not really feed the intellect or the heart. Junk religion is usually characterized by fear of the present and fear of the future. And I would go so far even as to say fear itself. Fear. That's what drives a lot of what we're seeing. A lot of the rhetoric that we're seeing, a lot of the theories that we've been seeing over and over. It's fear. What we experience when people have really met God is that there is no fear of the present because it is always full. There's no fear of the future because a loving God is in charge. There's no fear of the past because it has been healed and forgiven. Then people do not use God to avoid reality or to fabricate a private, self-serving reality. They let God lead them into the fullness of reality. And I get it. Sometimes reality is just a lot. But that's the way to true freedom in God, is by helping us to see again, let those scales fall off and see the reality of the where we're living, and then see the reality that we can do something about that with God's help and God's direction. We can discern how it is that we can all, through love, make that difference. Let God lead us into the fullness of reality. Whatever reconstruction that we're going to do cannot be based on fear or on reaction. It has to be based on a positive and fully human experience of God as a loving presence. And I firmly believe that. True religion is ready to let God be God and let God lead us into a new future that we don't yet understand and no longer even need to understand. Because if we're leading and living from our true faith in God and hearing Him and knowing that it's Him because He's talking to us to share love and peace and kindness and mercy and grace to all people, then we have nothing to fear and we can move forward